The stars were quiet that night, or so it seemed. In a remote observatory nestled in the Andes Mountains, Dr. Ilara Voss sat hunched over her workstation, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. Her eyes flickered between monitors displaying streams of data from deep space telescopes. For years, she had dedicated her life to listening to the universe, searching for something, anything, that might hint at life beyond Earth. But tonight felt different. Ilara was no stranger to long nights. At 34, she had spent most of her career chasing faint whispers in the cosmic static, only to be met with silence. Her colleagues often joked that she was wasting her time on impossible dreams, but Ilara didn't care. She believed in the vastness of the unknown and refused to let skepticism dim her curiosity. It started as a blip, a tiny ripple in the electromagnetic spectrum. Most astronomers would have ignored it, dismissing it as interference or random noise. But Ilara noticed something unusual about its pattern. It wasn't random. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. She leaned closer, her heart quickening. "What are you?" she whispered to herself, adjusting the filters on her screen. The signal grew clearer. Bursts of energy came in short, precise intervals, each one slightly stronger than the last. There was structure here, intention. Someone, or something, was sending this message. For hours, Ilara worked tirelessly, isolating the signal and analyzing its properties. By dawn, she had pieced together fragments of what appeared to be a repeating sequence. It wasn't just a natural phenomenon. It carried information, symbols, patterns, a language. But when she presented her findings to her team the next morning, they laughed. "Ilara," said Dr. Marcus Hale, the head of the observatory, "you're seeing patterns where there aren't any. This is probably just some glitch in the equipment." Ilara clenched her fists under the table, biting back frustration. She knew better. This wasn't a glitch. "Marcus," she said calmly, "look at the intervals. They're too consistent to be random. And these symbols, they repeat every 23 seconds. That's deliberate." Hale shrugged, clearly uninterested. "Even if it is real, who cares? It's probably just another failed SETI project. Let's focus on more practical research." Practical. That word stung. To them, exploring the mysteries of the universe was impractical. To Ilara, it was everything. Later that evening, alone in her office, Ilara stared at the signal again. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was onto something extraordinary. What if this really was proof of intelligent life? What if someone out there was trying to reach humanity? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Standing in the doorway was Cal Draven, a linguist and cryptographer who occasionally consulted with the observatory. He was known for his eccentric theories and sharp mind, traits that made him both admired and avoided by his peers. "I heard you found something interesting," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. His piercing blue eyes scanned her desk, landing on the printouts of the signal. Ilara hesitated, unsure whether to trust him, but something about Cal's demeanor put her at ease. "It's probably nothing," she admitted, though her tone betrayed her doubt. Cal studied the data silently for several minutes before speaking. "This isn't nothing," he finally said. "These patterns, they're not random. I've seen similar structures in ancient human languages. If I didn't know better, I'd say this is a distress call." A chill ran down Ilara's spine. A distress call? From where? And why would anyone send such a message to Earth? "We need to decode it," Cal continued, his voice tinged with excitement. "If we can figure out what it means, we might uncover something incredible." Ilara nodded slowly, her resolve hardening. Whatever this signal was, it deserved attention, even if no one else believed in it. Together, she and Cal began unraveling the mystery, unaware that their discovery would soon change the fate of two civilizations. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, someone, or something, waited anxiously for a response. Days turned into weeks as Ilara and Cal pored over the mysterious signal. Their small office became a fortress of papers, charts, and glowing computer screens, while the rest of the observatory dismissed their work as a waste of time. The two researchers worked tirelessly, driven by an unshakable belief that they were on the verge of something monumental. Ilara's initial excitement had given way to frustration. The signal was complex, too complex for traditional decoding methods. Its patterns shifted subtly every few hours, almost like it was adapting or evolving. "It's like trying to solve a puzzle that keeps changing its pieces," she muttered one evening, rubbing her tired eyes. Cale leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his chin. "Maybe that's exactly what it is," he said thoughtfully. "What if this isn't just a message? What if it's alive?" "Alive?" Ilara raised an eyebrow. "You mean artificial intelligence?" "Not necessarily AI," Cale replied. "Think about it. If this is coming from an alien civilization, their technology might be so advanced that we can't even comprehend how it works. Maybe the signal itself is part of their communication system, a living entity designed to interact with us." Ilara frowned but didn't dismiss the idea outright. After all, stranger things had happened in the vastness of space. If that's true, then we're not just decoding symbols. We're having a conversation. The realization hit them both at the same time. They weren't merely observers. They were participants. With renewed determination, they adjusted their approach, treating the signal less like data and more like dialogue. Slowly, patterns began to emerge, not just mathematical sequences, but fragments of meaning. One night, after hours of cross-referencing the signal with ancient Earth languages, Cale let out a triumphant laugh. "Got it," he exclaimed, pointing to a section of text on his screen. "Look at this. These symbols repeat consistently. They're identifiers. Names." Ilara peered over his shoulder. Sure enough, certain clusters of characters appeared multiple times throughout the signal. "Could these be names of individuals or places?" "Possibly both," Cale said. "But there's something else here." He highlighted another segment of the code. "This part, it's fragmented, but it looks like coordinates. Spatial coordinates." Ilara's pulse quickened. "Coordinates. You think they're telling us where they are?" "It's possible," Cale nodded. "Or maybe where they want us to go." As they continued analyzing the data, another discovery sent chills down their spines. Hidden within the signal was a warning, a series of distress signals embedded in the language. Whoever, or whatever, was sending this message wasn't just reaching out. They were asking for help. "This changes everything," Ilara whispered, staring at the screen. "They're in trouble." But before they could delve deeper, their project faced unexpected resistance. Word of their findings leaked to the observatory's board of directors, who demanded an explanation. Dr. Marcus Hale led the charge, accusing Ilara and Cale of wasting resources on what he called a wild goose chase. "You've been chasing shadows," Hale said during a heated meeting. "There's no proof this signal is anything more than cosmic interference. Stop wasting our time and focus on real science." Ilara clenched her fists under the table, her face flushed with anger. Real science wasn't exploring the unknown, the very essence of science. But before she could retort, Cale stepped in. "With respect, Dr. Hale," Cale said calmly, "we may not have definitive proof yet, but dismissing this outright is reckless. If there's even a chance this signal represents intelligent life, shouldn't we investigate further? Isn't that why we built these telescopes in the first place?" Hale opened his mouth to argue, but a soft voice interrupted him. "I agree with Dr. Draven." Everyone turned to see Dr. Priya Patel, a senior astrophysicist known for her meticulous research. She rarely spoke up in meetings, but when she did, people listened. "This signal deserves attention," she continued. "We owe it to ourselves, and to whatever might be out there, to explore it fully." Her words tipped the scales. Reluctantly, the board granted Ilara and Cale a 2-week extension to continue their work. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Back in their office, Ilara sighed with relief. Thank you for standing up for us, Kale. And thank Priya for me. Kale smiled faintly. Don't thank me yet. We still have a lot of work to do. As they returned to their computers, the weight of their task settled heavily on their shoulders. Somewhere out there, someone, or something, was waiting for a response, and time was running out. Little did they know, their efforts would soon uncover secrets far greater than they could imagine. The 2-week deadline loomed over Ilara and Kale like a storm cloud. Every moment counted, and sleep had become a luxury neither could afford. Their office was now a chaotic blend of coffee cups, scribbled notes, and glowing screens displaying endless streams of data. But despite the pressure, they were closer than ever to cracking the mystery of the signal. What if we're wrong? Ilara asked one late night, her voice tinged with doubt. What if this isn't a message at all? What if it's just noise? Kale didn't look up from his laptop. If it's noise, then why does it keep responding to us? That was the breakthrough they hadn't told anyone about, not even Priya Patel. A few days earlier, while experimenting with different frequencies, they'd sent a simple mathematical sequence back toward the source of the signal. To their astonishment, the response came almost immediately, a modified version of their sequence, confirming receipt. It's not just listening, Kale said firmly. It's talking. Ilara nodded, though her heart raced with both excitement and fear. If this truly was communication, it meant humanity wasn't alone in the universe. But what kind of civilization would reach out across the stars? Were they friendly, hostile, or something entirely beyond human comprehension? Their next step was risky but necessary. Using experimental quantum communication technology developed by a private aerospace company, they crafted a more complex reply, a binary-coded image of Earth, its continents outlined against the vastness of space. It was humanity's way of saying, this is where we are. For 3 agonizing days, there was no response. Ilara began to wonder if they'd misinterpreted the signal after all. Maybe sending an unsolicited message had been reckless. Then, on the 4th day, the observatory's systems lit up with activity. They're answering, Kale shouted, nearly knocking over his chair in excitement. The incoming transmission was unlike anything they'd seen before. Instead of fragmented symbols or mathematical patterns, it carried something new, visual data. When decoded, it revealed a series of images, strange landscapes bathed in hues of violet and gold, towering crystalline structures that seemed to shimmer like liquid, and finally, beings unlike any life form on Earth. They were tall and slender, with translucent skin that glowed faintly. Their eyes, large and multifaceted, seemed to hold infinite wisdom. Around them, smaller shapes darted in and out of view, almost blending into their surroundings as if they weren't fully there. They're beautiful, Ilara whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. For years, she'd dreamed of this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of seeing another species for the first time. But the images weren't just introductions, they carried context. Accompanying the visuals were bursts of text, symbols arranged in sequences that matched patterns Kale had identified earlier. Working together, Ilara and Kale deciphered fragments of meaning. We are Valeth. Our home is lost. Help us. A chill ran down Ilara's spine. The Valeth weren't explorers or conquerors. They were refugees. Whatever catastrophe had forced them to leave their world, it was dire enough to drive them across galaxies in search of sanctuary. When Kel translated the final piece of the message, their situation became painfully clear. Hunters follow. Hide us. Ilara sat back, overwhelmed. This wasn't just a scientific discovery. It was a moral dilemma. Humanity had barely begun exploring the stars, yet here was a plea for help from a species far older and more advanced. Could Earth offer them refuge? Should it? Before they could decide their next move, word of the decoded message reached the observatory's board. Within hours, government officials arrived, demanding answers. Cameras flashed outside the facility as news outlets picked up rumors of alien contact. You've opened Pandora's box, Marcus Hale muttered grimly when he saw Ilara in the hallway. She met his gaze without flinching. Maybe, she replied. But someone had to open it eventually. As chaos erupted around them, Ilara and Kale knew one thing for certain. The Vayleth's arrival would change everything, for better or worse, and humanity's response would define its place in the cosmos. Little did they know, the hardest decisions were still ahead. News of the Vayleth spread like wildfire. Within hours, headlines blared across every corner of the globe. Aliens among us. First contact confirmed. The images of the Vayleth, ethereal and otherworldly, were splashed on television screens, social media feeds, and front pages. Humanity had always wondered if it was alone in the universe, but now that the answer had arrived, the world wasn't sure what to do with it. Ilara found herself at the center of a storm she hadn't anticipated. Government officials, scientists, and journalists descended upon the observatory, demanding explanations. She stood before them all, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "The Vayleth are not invaders," she said, addressing a packed conference room. "They are refugees seeking our help. Their message is clear. They need protection." Her words sparked fierce debate. Some saw the Vayleth as an opportunity, a chance to learn from an advanced civilization and propel humanity into a new era of technological progress. Others viewed them with suspicion, fearing their arrival would invite danger or destabilize Earth's fragile balance. Conspiracy theories flourished online, claiming the Vayleth were spies or weapons designed by an alien empire to infiltrate Earth. Among the loudest voices was Dr. Marcus Hale, who had become an outspoken critic of Ilara's work. In televised interviews, he argued that humanity wasn't ready for such responsibility. "We can barely manage our own planet," he declared. "How can we possibly protect an alien species? This isn't altruism, it's arrogance." But Ilara refused to back down. With Kale by her side, she presented evidence of the Vayleth's peaceful nature and their desperate plight. They emphasized the hunters mentioned in the message, the looming threat that chased the Vayleth across the stars. "If we turn them away," Ilara warned during a press briefing, "we're condemning them to extinction. And if the hunters find us, we may share their fate." Public opinion was split. Protests erupted in cities around the world. In New York, thousands gathered under banners reading "Welcome the Vayleth" and "Earth stands together." Meanwhile, in London, counter-protesters chanted slogans like "Humans first." Corporations saw dollar signs, lobbying governments to negotiate trade deals with the Vayleth in exchange for asylum. Religious groups debated whether the aliens were creations of God or harbingers of doom. Amid the chaos, Ilara received an unexpected ally, Priya Patel. Leveraging her influence within the scientific community, Priya organized a coalition of researchers to support Ilara's cause. "We owe it to ourselves to act with compassion," Priya said during a global summit. "This is not just about the Vayleth. It's about who we choose to be as a species." Governments struggled to form a unified response. The United Nations convened an emergency assembly, inviting Ilara to present her findings directly to world leaders. For the first time in history, nations set aside their differences, at least temporarily, to address a crisis that transcended borders. As Ilara addressed the assembly, she felt the enormity of the moment pressing down on her. "The Vayleth have chosen Earth because they believe in our potential," she said, her voice resonating through the chamber. "They see us as protectors, not because we are strong, but because we are overlooked. Our obscurity makes us safe, but this decision isn't just about saving them. It's about proving to ourselves that we can rise above fear and selfishness." Her speech struck a chord. After days of deliberation, the UN voted to offer the Vayleth temporary refuge, contingent on strict conditions. Earth would provide sanctuary, but the Vayleth would remain isolated while humanity assessed the risks. Though relieved, Ilara knew the hardest part lay ahead. Convincing the world was only step one. Convincing the Vayleth themselves would require trust and time. As she returned to the observatory, exhausted but determined. Kel greeted her with a small smile. "You did it," he said softly. "For now," Ilara replied. "But this is just the beginning." Outside, the stars twinkled silently, watching as humanity took its first steps toward becoming something greater than itself. With the United Nations' decision to offer refuge, Ilara and Kale were tasked with establishing formal communication with the Vailith. It was no longer just about decoding signals. It was about building a bridge between two vastly different civilizations. For Ilara, this meant stepping into uncharted territory, not just as a scientist, but as humanity's ambassador. The first challenge was finding a way to sustain real-time interaction. Quantum communication technology allowed for near-instantaneous exchanges over vast distances, but the Vailith's responses remained slow and cautious. Their words carried an air of deliberation, as though each sentence was carefully weighed before being sent. Through trial and error, Ilara and Kale learned that the Vailith communicated not only through language but also through emotions and subtle shifts in light patterns embedded in their transmissions. One evening, after weeks of painstaking dialogue, Ilara felt a breakthrough. The Vailith leader introduced herself, a shimmering figure named Zinara. Her presence radiated calm and wisdom, even through the pixelated images on the screen. Zinara explained that her people had wandered the stars for generations, relying on their cloaking abilities to avoid detection. But when their technology faltered during a perilous migration, they became vulnerable to predators. The ruthless Krillian Empire, who viewed the Vailith as abominations due to their unique ability to blend into any environment. "They see us as unnatural," Zinara said, her voice soft yet tinged with sorrow. "To them, we are a stain upon existence." Ilara listened intently, her heart aching at the weight of Zinara's words. She realized how much courage it must have taken for the Vailith to reach out to humanity, knowing they risked rejection, or worse, betrayal. "You're safe here," Ilara assured her. "We will protect you." Over time, Ilara formed a deep bond with Zinara. Their conversations moved beyond practical matters like logistics and safety protocols. Zinara shared stories of her people's history, their nomadic culture, their reverence for harmony, and their philosophy of coexistence. In turn, Ilara spoke of Earth's struggles and triumphs, its beauty and imperfections. Though separated by light years, the two women found common ground in their shared hope for peace. Kale played a crucial role in translating the nuances of the Vailith language. He discovered that their communication wasn't linear like human speech. It existed in layers, blending meaning with emotion. Words alone couldn't capture the depth of their expressions, so he worked tirelessly to adapt Earth's languages to better convey their messages. "It's like poetry," he told Ilara one night. "Every word has multiple meanings depending on context. They don't just say things, they feel them." As the days passed, Ilara began to notice changes in herself. The stress and doubt that once plagued her dissipated, replaced by a sense of purpose she'd never known before. Working alongside the Vailith reminded her why she fell in love with science in the first place, not for glory or recognition, but for the chance to connect with something greater than herself. Meanwhile, public interest in the Vailith continued to grow. Documentaries aired showcasing their crystalline cities and glowing forms. Artists created paintings inspired by their ethereal appearance, while musicians composed symphonies based on their harmonic frequencies. Humanity's fascination with the aliens transformed fear into wonder, curiosity into admiration. But not everyone welcomed this shift. Critics argued that focusing on the Vailith distracted from pressing issues on Earth: climate change, poverty, inequality. Some conspiracy theorists claimed the Vailith were manipulating humanity through emotional appeals, using Ilara as their puppet. Despite the backlash, Ilara remained steadfast. She knew the Vailith weren't perfect beings. They were survivors, driven by desperation and fear, but they deserved compassion. And through her connection with Zinara, she glimpsed a future where humans and Vailith could thrive together. One evening, as she stared at the stars outside the observatory, Ilara felt a profound sense of gratitude. The Valeth had come seeking refuge, but in doing so, they had given humanity a gift: the chance to redefine itself. By choosing empathy over fear, perhaps Earth could become more than just a sanctuary. It could become a home for all. Little did she know, the true test of that promise was closer than anyone imagined. For weeks, Earth prepared for the arrival of the Valeth. Refuge sites were established in remote locations, places hidden from prying eyes and shielded by dense forests or mountains. Scientists worked around the clock to adapt the Valeth's cloaking technology for human use, hoping to create defenses that could protect both species if their enemies followed. Ilara spent most of her days coordinating with Zinara, ensuring the transition would be as smooth as possible. Through their conversations, she learned more about the Krillian Empire, the hunters who pursued the Valeth across galaxies. They were a militaristic civilization, obsessed with purity and order, viewing any deviation from their rigid standards as a threat to existence itself. To them, the Valeth's ability to blend into environments represented chaos, an affront to their ideals. "They will not stop until we are gone," Zinara warned during one exchange. Her voice carried a quiet resignation, but also determination. "If they find us here, your world will suffer alongside ours." Ilara felt a chill run down her spine. She had always known the stakes were high, but hearing it directly from Zinara made the danger feel real and immediate. "We won't let that happen," Ilara promised. "Earth is ready." But deep down, she wasn't so sure. Despite humanity's best efforts, there was no guarantee their preparations would hold against an advanced alien force like the Krillians. The thought kept her awake at night, staring at the ceiling as scenarios played out in her mind. Then, one fateful morning, the unthinkable happened. Sensors at the observatory detected an anomaly: a massive fleet entering Earth's solar system. At first, astronomers assumed it was a comet or asteroid cluster, but further analysis revealed something far more ominous. The ships were sleek and angular, bristling with weapons capable of obliterating entire planets. Their trajectory left no doubt. They were heading straight for Earth. Panic erupted worldwide. News outlets broke the story within minutes, sparking hysteria. Governments scrambled to mobilize defenses, but humanity's weapons paled in comparison to what the Krillians brought with them. Cities emptied as people fled to underground bunkers, while others took to the streets in protests demanding answers. Ilara rushed to the observatory, her heart pounding. Kale met her at the door, his face pale. "It's them," he said simply. "The hunters." Together, they contacted Zinara, who confirmed their worst fears. "They found us," she said, her normally serene demeanor replaced by urgency. "You must activate the cloaking grid immediately." The cloaking grid, a hastily assembled network combining Valeth and human technology, was humanity's last line of defense. Designed to mask large areas from detection, it relied on power sources scattered across the globe. Activating it required synchronizing these sources perfectly, a task fraught with risk. As nations debated whether to trust the Valeth's plan, time ran out. The Krillian fleet reached Earth's orbit, deploying scout vessels to scan the planet. Fires raged in cities attacked by energy beams, and communication systems began to fail under the strain of electromagnetic pulses. In a desperate move, Ilara broadcast a global message. "This isn't just their fight, it's ours," she pleaded. "If we don't stand together now, none of us will survive." Her words struck a chord. Reluctantly, world leaders agreed to activate the grid. Engineers and technicians worked tirelessly, guided by instructions from the Valeth. As the final connections clicked into place, Earth disappeared beneath a shimmering veil of invisibility. For a moment, silence fell. Then, through the chaos, came a faint signal from the Krillian flagship. It was a taunt, a promise that this wasn't over. Ilara clenched her fists, fear and resolve warring inside her. The hunters might have been delayed, but they weren't gone. Humanity had bought itself some time, but at what cost? Outside, the stars still shone, indifferent witnesses to the battle raging below. For now, Earth remained hidden, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the Krillians returned, and when they did, humanity would need more than technology to survive. It would need courage, unity, and hope. The cloaking grid held. For now, Earth was invisible, shielded from the Krillian fleet's scanners by a fragile web of human and Violet ingenuity. But everyone knew it was only a temporary solution. The hunters hadn't left. They were out there, lurking in orbit, waiting for the veil to drop or falter. Every second felt like borrowed time. Ilara stood in the command center of the observatory, surrounded by blinking monitors and tense faces. Scientists, engineers, and military personnel worked side by side, united by a single goal: survival. For the first time in history, humanity had set aside its divisions to face a threat that transcended borders, politics, and ideologies. Even Marcus Hale, once Ilara's harshest critic, joined the effort, his skepticism replaced by grim determination. "We're not just fighting for us," he said during a strategy meeting. "We're fighting for them too." He gestured toward an image of the Valeth on one of the screens. "If we lose, they lose everything." Kale nodded in agreement. "And if we win, we prove something important, not just to ourselves, but to the universe. That compassion isn't weakness, it's strength." Ilara listened silently, her mind racing. She had spent years searching for signs of intelligent life beyond Earth, never imagining she'd find herself leading humanity into battle against an alien empire. Yet here she was, her decisions shaping the fate of two civilizations. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders, but she refused to buckle under it. The next step was clear. Humanity needed to fight smarter, not harder. The Krillians' technology vastly outmatched Earth's conventional weapons, so direct confrontation would be suicide. Instead, they turned to guerrilla tactics, using the Valeth's cloaking abilities to their advantage. Engineers modified drones and fighter jets, with stealth coatings derived from Valeth designs. Pilots trained to strike quickly and vanish before the enemy could retaliate. Civilians contributed too, sharing data through decentralized networks to track the Krillian fleet's movements. Social media became a tool for coordination rather than panic, with hashtags like #StandWithValeth uniting millions around the globe. But the real breakthrough came when Zenera revealed a secret about her people's biology. The Valeth didn't just rely on external cloaking devices. They could manipulate light and energy fields at a molecular level, bending reality itself to remain unseen. With guidance from Zenera, scientists developed experimental suits that mimicked this ability, allowing soldiers to blend into their surroundings almost perfectly. "These aren't costumes," Kale explained during a demonstration. "They're extensions of who we are now: protectors, defenders, survivors." As preparations intensified, public morale soared. Stories of heroism spread across news outlets, inspiring acts of bravery and selflessness. In Tokyo, a group of hackers disabled a Krillian drone targeting civilians. In Rio de Janeiro, volunteers built makeshift shelters for displaced families while singing songs of unity. Even skeptics began to see the value in standing together, realizing that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its machines, it was its spirit. The turning point came during a daring raid led by Ilara and a team of elite operatives. Using cloaked shuttles, they infiltrated a Krillian scout ship hovering over the Pacific Ocean. Their mission: disable the vessel's scanning array to buy more time for Earth's defenses. It was risky, but failure wasn't an option. Inside the alien craft, the air hummed with tension. Strange symbols glowed on walls made of shimmering metal, and the low thrum of machinery echoed through narrow corridors. Ilara moved cautiously, her suit rendering her nearly invisible. Beside her, Kale whispered updates into his comms device, guiding the team through the labyrinthine ship. When they reached the control room, chaos erupted. Laser blasts lit up the dim space as Krillian guards detected their presence. Outnumbered and outgunned, Ilara and her team fought with precision and resolve. Just as hope seemed lost, Kale managed to override the ship's systems, triggering an explosion that crippled its sensors. Back on Earth, cheers erupted in the command center as the scout ship went dark. The victory was small but significant, a reminder that humanity could hold its own against even the most formidable foes. As Ilara gazed at the stars through the observatory window later that night, she allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. The road ahead would be long and perilous, but humanity had risen to the challenge. Together, they had proven that compassion and courage could shine even in the darkest times. And somewhere among those stars, the Valith watched, grateful and hopeful. The Krillian fleet wasn't idle. Though their initial scans had been thwarted by the cloaking grid, they adapted quickly, deploying new weapons designed to strip away camouflage and expose hidden foes. Massive energy pulses swept across Earth's surface, tearing through forests, cities, and oceans like invisible hurricanes. The planet trembled under the assault, its people clinging to hope as chaos unfolded. Ilara stood in the command center, her face pale but resolute. Reports flooded in from every corner of the globe. Entire towns wiped out, communication systems collapsing, and millions displaced. Despite humanity's best efforts, the Krillians' technology was relentless. Every victory came at a cost, and the losses were mounting. "We can't keep this up forever," Marcus Hale muttered, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "They're too strong." "No," Ilara said firmly, turning to face him. Her eyes burned with determination. "We don't have a choice. If we give up now, everything we've fought for is lost. Not just for us, but for the Valith too." Kale nodded in agreement. "There has to be a way to turn their strength against them. We need to think differently." Zenera appeared on one of the monitors, her translucent form shimmering faintly. She had been monitoring the battle alongside humanity, offering guidance whenever possible. "Their power lies in their scanners," she said softly. "Without them, they are blind." Ilara's mind raced. If they could disable the scanners on the Krillian flagship, the heart of their fleet, they might stand a chance. But reaching it would require breaching multiple layers of defenses, including swarms of drones and heavily armed cruisers. "It's suicide," Marcus argued when Ilara proposed the plan. "You'll never make it." "Maybe," Ilara replied, her tone unwavering. "But if we do nothing, we're finished anyway. At least this way, we have a shot." With no time to waste, a small team of volunteers prepared for the mission. Pilots, engineers, and soldiers equipped with cloaking suits boarded modified shuttles designed to evade detection. Ilara insisted on leading the charge, despite protests from Kale and others. "This started with me," she said. "I'm not sitting this one out." As the shuttles launched into orbit, the world watched anxiously. News outlets broadcast live footage of the daring operation, capturing the tension gripping humanity. Families huddled around screens, praying for the team's success. Even skeptics held their breath, knowing that failure meant annihilation. The journey to the flagship was harrowing. Energy fields crackled around the massive vessel, creating deadly barriers that threatened to tear the shuttles apart. Inside, the team worked in perfect synchronization, using Zenera's guidance to navigate the treacherous terrain. Each moment felt like an eternity, every decision carrying life or death consequences. When they finally breached the flagship's hull, all hell broke loose. Krillian warriors descended upon them, their weapons blazing. Cloaked operatives darted through corridors, disabling key systems while drawing enemy fire. Explosions rocked the ship, sending shockwaves rippling through its metallic veins. Ilara led a smaller group toward the central control room, where the flagship's master scanner was housed. Along the way, she encountered fierce resistance, but also glimpses of hope. Civilians trapped aboard the ship rescued moments before certain death. Soldiers sacrificing themselves to protect their comrades. Humanity's spirit burned brightly, even in the darkest corners of the alien craft. Finally, they'd reached the control room. Ilara planted explosives around the scanner core, setting a timer to ensure enough time for escape. As the countdown began, Krillian reinforcements closed in, forcing the team to fight their way back to the shuttles. Just as the explosives detonated, Ilara leaped onto the last shuttle, her body battered but alive. The flagship shuddered violently, its once impenetrable defenses crumbling. Without its scanners, the entire fleet faltered, giving humanity, and the Valeth, a fighting chance. Back on Earth, cheers erupted as news of the victory spread. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. Through courage and unity, humanity had proven it could rise to meet even the greatest challenges. And Ilara, she gazed at the stars, her heart swelling with pride. They had struck a blow against fear itself, and shown the universe what it meant to truly stand together. The destruction of the Krillian flagship marked a turning point in the war, but it came at a heavy cost. Cities lay in ruins, their streets scared by energy blasts and debris. Millions had been displaced, seeking refuge in underground bunkers or makeshift camps scattered across the globe. The skies above Earth were no longer blue. They were streaked with ash and smoke, a grim reminder of the battle that had raged. Yet amid the devastation, hope flickered like a candle in the dark. The Krillian fleet, now disoriented without its central scanner, retreated to regroup. It was a temporary reprieve, but one humanity desperately needed. For the first time since the invasion began, people dared to breathe easier. Ilara stood on the edge of what used to be Central Park, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as she surveyed the wreckage. Trees once lush and green were reduced to charred stumps, and craters pocked the ground where children had once played. Despite the ruin, volunteers worked tirelessly to rebuild, clearing rubble, tending to the injured, and comforting those who had lost everything. "You did good," Kale said softly, approaching her from behind. His voice carried both pride and sorrow. "We couldn't have done it without you." Ilara shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "It doesn't feel like enough. Look at this place. Look at what they've done." Kale placed a hand on her shoulder. "I know, but we're still here. That's something. And we'll keep fighting, not just for ourselves, but for them." He nodded toward the horizon, where faint glimmers of light hinted at the presence of the Valeth cloak nearby. Zenera appeared moments later, her ethereal form shimmering faintly against the twilight sky. She approached Ilara hesitantly, her multifaceted eyes filled with gratitude. "Your bravery saved us," she said simply. "We will never forget." Ilara managed a small smile, though her heart ached. "You would have done the same for us." In the weeks that followed, humanity and the Valeth worked together to heal the wounds inflicted by the Krillians. Engineers collaborated to repair damaged infrastructure, while scientists adapted Valeth technology to restore power grids and communication networks. Farmers shared crops with displaced communities, and artists painted murals on crumbling walls, transforming scars into symbols of resilience. Public sentiment shifted dramatically. Where fear and division had once threatened to tear humanity apart, unity now took root. People saw the Valeth not as strangers but as allies, fellow survivors bound by shared suffering and determination. Social media buzzed with stories of collaboration. A child teaching a Valeth how to draw, a Valeth healer using their unique abilities to mend broken bones, or an elderly man sharing his favorite songs with curious alien ears. Even governments began to change. Leaders who had once argued over borders and resources now focused on rebuilding a better world, one built on compassion and cooperation. The United Nations established a joint council with representatives from both species, tasked with preparing for future threats while fostering mutual understanding. Ilara became a symbol of this new era. Her speeches inspired millions, reminding them that even in the face of unimaginable loss, humanity could choose to rise. "This isn't just about survival," she told a global audience during a televised address. "It's about becoming more than we were before. Together, we can create a future where no one is left behind, not humans, not the Valeth, and not any other life forms out there waiting to be discovered." As Earth slowly healed, so too did its relationship with the stars. Observatories reopened, scanning the skies not just for danger, but for opportunities, to explore, to learn, and to connect. Humanity realized it was no longer alone, and with that knowledge came responsibility. One evening, as Ilara stood beneath the repaired dome of her observatory, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. The stars twinkled brightly, unobscured by smoke or ash. Somewhere among them, the Krillians plotted their next move, but for now, Earth was safe, and alongside humanity stood the Valeth, proud and unafraid. Together, they had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. For the first time, Ilara allowed herself to dream of a future where fear gave way to hope, and where Earth became a beacon of light in the vastness of space. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of humanity's journey among the stars. Years passed, and Earth transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The scars of war remained, etched into landscapes and memories, but they became symbols not of defeat, but of resilience. Humanity had risen from the ashes, forging a new identity shaped by unity, compassion, and courage. And at its heart stood the alliance with the Valeth, a bond that redefined what it meant to be part of something greater than oneself. Ilara, now older and wiser, watched as humanity stepped boldly into the cosmos. No longer content to gaze at the stars through telescopes, people ventured beyond their solar system, guided by lessons learned from the Valeth. Their cloaking technology, once used for survival, now served exploration, allowing ships to glide silently through dangerous territories while observing civilizations too fragile to risk contact. The partnership between humans and Valeth grew stronger with each passing year. Together, they built sanctuaries for other persecuted species, offering refuge to those fleeing oppression or extinction. These safe havens dotted the galaxy, hidden beneath veils of light and energy, protected by joint patrols of human pilots and Valeth guardians. For the first time in history, Earth was no longer an overlooked planet. It was a beacon of hope, a place where life forms from across the stars could find safety and understanding. Kale, who had once been skeptical of Ilara's dreams, became one of humanity's greatest advocates for interstellar diplomacy. He traveled aboard diplomatic vessels, acting as a bridge between cultures, translating languages, interpreting customs, and fostering trust. His work earned him recognition not just on Earth, but among alien species who saw him as a symbol of cooperation. Zinara, meanwhile, remained a steadfast ally to humanity. Though her people continued their nomadic existence, many chose to stay on Earth, integrating into human society while sharing their knowledge and wisdom. They taught humanity how to live in harmony with nature, how to blend into environments without causing harm, and how to see beauty in imperfection. In return, humans offered them stability, a home where they could exist without fear. But the Krillian Empire still loomed in the distance. Though defeated years ago, rumors of their resurgence reached Earth periodically. Scouts reported sightings of their fleets amassing near distant star systems, preparing for another campaign of conquest. Yet this time, humanity wasn't afraid. With the Valeth by their side, and armed with shared technology and resolve, they stood ready to defend not just themselves, but all who sought freedom. One evening, Ilara returned to the observatory where it had all begun. Now retired, she spent her days mentoring young astronomers and scientists eager to follow in her footsteps. As she gazed at the night sky, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Humanity had come so far since that first faint signal. The dream of connection had become reality. "You did it," Kale said softly, joining her on the balcony. "You showed us we're capable of more than we ever imagined." Ilara smiled, shaking her head. "Not me. All of us. This victory belongs to everyone who chose hope over fear." Below them, lights twinkled across the city, a testament to humanity's progress. Above, the stars stretched endlessly, calling out to those brave enough to answer. Somewhere among them, the Valeth sailed quietly, their forms shimmering like echoes of the universe itself. As Ilara looked up, she whispered a silent promise. to the stars, to the Valeth, and to future generations. Humanity would not falter. It would continue exploring, learning, and protecting. Together, they would ensure that no one was ever overlooked again. And so, under the vast expanse of the cosmos, Earth took its place as a guardian of the galaxy, a shining example of what could be achieved when two worlds united under the banner of hope. The story didn't end there. It never truly ended. But for now, humanity had found its purpose, and that was enough.